Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. So, uh,
You
thank
can
you so
go.
much, guys. Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, guys. It was a slight disturbance, but yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much, Luca, for giving me this wonderful opportunity for Azure Day today. So, I'm going to discuss about what are the responsibilities of the DBA in the cloud. So, let's get started. A little bit about me. I'm a database administrator having several years of experience in managing SQL Server and databases. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and Microsoft certified solution expert. I did my master's in computer technology at Eastern Illinois University, and I do blog for dbnuggets.com. And my website is dbnuggets.com, and my Twitter ID is at dbnuggets. And you down below, that's my email address. Like if you have any questions regarding this session later, please do not hesitate to contact me. So what are we going to discuss in this session today? We are going to see the overview of Azure offerings, and we are going to see the difference between Azure SQL and the on-premises SQL Server. And we are going to see the DBA responsibilities in the cloud. So many people will be thinking like once we move to the Azure, DBA do not have any responsibilities, or we might lose the job, or do we have to learn about Azure DevOps, or do we have to completely change our job responsibilities? But the thing is, DBA job is going to evolve more. That means we need to maintain the databases on the Azure. The difference is that all the maintenance that we do is on the Azure, but still our job are not going anywhere. We are still having our jobs with the new responsibilities, which is cool, right? Learning new stuff every day is good. So we are going to also see the tools that we use for the Azure migrations, and I'm going to provide you a couple of resources to where you can start your Azure journey. The Azure offerings, when it come to Azure offerings, we have three Azure offerings. Basically, infrastructure as a service, which is like SQL Server on Azure VM, which is like general SQL Server on your VM that you see. Like generally, you connect to the management studio and you see all of those agents and all of the other capabilities you can use, offerings you can use from the all about the SQL Server as well as the Windows OS. You have access to everything. That's infrastructure as a service. Where on the Azure VM, we will host our SQL Server, where we can have the access to both OS as well as the SQL Server. And then comes to the next, the platform as a service. We do have two options here. One is the Azure SQL Managed Instance, where you have the capabilities of the server itself, like server offerings, instance offerings, capabilities you have. You can manage SQL agent and you can manage all of those services. There is also one more platform as a service, which is especially Azure SQL Database. That means once you create the Azure SQL Database, you will not have the capability of using the instance wide capabilities, because you just have one database. You will not have an instance when you create Azure SQL Database. So let's talk a little bit about SQL Server on Azure VM, which is on infrastructure as a service. So the offerings that the Microsoft provides are, you will be able to access the operating system. You will have the complete functionality of the SQL Server instance, where you can go ahead and choose the OS versions and the SQL Server versions from SQL Server 2008 to 2019 until 2019. So you will be having the options like what version you want to choose on both OS level as well as the SQL Server level, and you will be taking care of the patching responsibility and upgrades, and you are responsible for everything. So who needs this actually? Who needs infrastructure as a service, and who wants to create SQL Server on Azure VM? Companies who have the older versions of SQL Server, like SQL Server 2008 or SQL Server 2008 R2, where they are not yet ready to do their upgrades because their applications are not yet ready yet. The developers doesn't want to make those modifications on their applications yet to do those upgrades. But still, they wanted to get those security updates from Microsoft. Those companies need these SQL Server on Azure machines, on virtual machines. And any softwares, right, any softwares that you have that needs the access to the operating system, they need SQL Server on Azure VM. And if you want to make sure your failovers are as soon as possible, you are able to failovering as soon as possible, then this is an option for them as well. When comes to the Azure SQL managed instance, like you are giving away certain responsibilities to the Microsoft, meaning that like if you do not want to take care of operating system management anymore, you can go ahead and use Azure SQL managed instance, because that way SQL Server will Microsoft will go ahead and manage the operating system like patches and then security updates for you. But then you have the instance level capabilities where you can go ahead and use all of the services of SQL Server engine that it can offer. So who needs this, right? Azure SQL managed instance. Whoever needs the instance level capabilities, that means whoever want to control the service broker, DTC, SQL Server agent for their jobs, or if you wanted to use the machine learning services or database mail to send the mails, and CLR or replication log shipping, if you want to have the cross database transactions, then you will be having, like, it is better for you to use Azure SQL managed instance, which comes under the platform as a service. The latest technology is the Azure SQL database, which is where it provides so many capabilities for you. Though you have just database as a service, like platform as a service, the offerings are like, it will give you that high availability of 99.9995995% of the high availability, like your uptime of the database. And this is like a SQL database as a service. So you will only get a database, you will not get any instance. Who needs this Azure SQL database as a service, right? So whoever doesn't want to, deal with the automatic upgrades of your databases, because Azure SQL database is versionless. So they will do the upgrades for you. Microsoft will do the upgrades for you. You will not have any disturbance in your applications, because if we do the upgrades, or just like the SQL Server on Azure virtual machine, if we do the upgrades, we might have hiccups from the applications once we do the upgrades, because we might have missed something, right? Then we have to go ahead and check whether we have to roll back or whether we have to right away make those hot fixes on our applications. But if you are on Azure SQL database, you have that nice options where SQL Server will go ahead and Microsoft will go ahead and do those automatic upgrades for you. So it's basically versionless. And for the multi-tenant services, if you use multi-tenant services like Elastic Pools, where you have multiple databases, Elastic Pool meaning where you have multiple databases using the same resources to save the space, like to save the money. Those kind of services can also use Azure SQL database. And if your database is like huge, right, like Azure SQL database will actually handle up to 8 terabytes of size database. But if you wanted to have like more than 8 TB until 100 TB or more than 100 TB of size of your database, like if you have a database, OLTP database, and you do not want to move to the data warehouse yet to do those reporting of your for your reports, but you wanted to use the Azure SQL database for both of your OLTP as well as report for the report purposes as well. In that case, there is this feature known as hyperscale, which is a completely different capability where you can store a large amount of large size of database, up to 100 TB. There is like there is something known as like the database itself will be cached in different layers so that the hyperscale will be able to manage your database with very less downtime. Even though you wanted to restore the database, no matter like how big it is, how big of the database it is, they can do it very quickly because they have that a certain feature like having the multiple layers of cache inbuilt within the system that will give you like wide amount of storage and with high availability. And people who need like serverless compute, right? So there is this service where it is known as serverless compute, meaning pay as you go. Like if you're not using your database for certain amount of time, then you do not have to pay for the compute. You just have to pay for the storage. So that capability you have for the Azure SQL database, and you have the ability of private endpoints like if you do not want your users wanted to connect to the public endpoint, you can go ahead and create the private endpoint, which is like super private and secure. So when compared with the differences, right? What is the difference between Azure SQL versus on-prem? I would like to thank late SQL family member Ahmad Osama. I have taken the information from him. He have been expired lately. Uh, so uh, uh, I learned so much from him. So I wanted to give the credit for him for this slide. So the differences are there is no SQL Server agent on Azure SQL database. But then, you might be thinking, oh, there is no SQL Server agent. So how do I do my jobs, right? You have that. You can go ahead and automatically by using the portal, you can go ahead and do those. You can go ahead and create those jobs by using the Azure portal within the Azure portal, and you do not have any recovery model for your database once you are on Azure SQL. It is always full recovery model, and there is no CDC, change data capture, or DB mirroring, or replication. But instead of these DB mirroring or replication, you have that auto failover groups and geo replication on your Azure SQL database. And there is no SQL CLR, no file stream, no cross database queries, but there are other capabilities where you will be able to do the cross database queries as well. There are options to do that on Azure as well. And you cannot use the multi-part names, like you cannot do the database name dot schema dot table name, except for the temp table. For the temp table, if you wanted to connect to the temp table by using the Azure SQL, you can do it by providing tempdb dot schema dot table name. But for the rest of the user databases across the databases, you cannot do that. And there is no auditing, just like we have the auditing on-prem, but there is a different type of auditing that we can set up inside the Azure portal. There is no SQL browser service, and you cannot do the table partitioning. All of those file groups that you have will be only on the primary data file, and you do not have the database mail. But you can set up those alerts inside the Azure portal. And you do not have SQL browser service, resource governor, log shipping, trace flags. You do not have it because this is a SQL Server database, like the platform as a service. Because trace flags are instant level flags that you will be enabling, you will not be having that on Azure SQL database, and you will not be having the SQL trace. But instead of SQL trace, you can use those. You can use the extended events. Those are the differences, basic differences. And you might be thinking, what is my job, right? You have been speaking the differences and everything, but what is my job as a DBA once we move to the Azure? Once we move to the Azure, we still are going to take care of databases, the database maintenance. Within the database, you go and like designing the databases, like you will go ahead and look into those query optimizations. If your developer come to you and say, hey, my store procedure is suddenly running very slow, can you go ahead and look into it? So query optimization, still as a DBA, we are going to take care of it. And if you're still on-prem, right, who will do the migrations to the Azure? It's we as a DBA. We will be handling all of those migrations. We will be sitting up with the team members, discussing how we have to plan those migrations, and you will be planning those migrations because you will be looking at those remediation scripts that we have to modify before doing the migrations. It's all your job to take your databases from on-prem to on cloud, and you will be doing those cost planning because every service you use on Azure portal, for each service you have a cost associated with it. So you are the one you will be you are the one who will be going ahead and planning these costs, like what services can we use and how much cost does it takes for next couple of years, how much cost does it might take, right? Those are the things that as a DBA we are going to take care of it. And setting up the alerts, it's we who are going to set up the alerts and automation also. Automating the jobs that you cannot do by using the SQL Server agent, right? Because your SQL Server agent is not available. So you will be using those automated automation from the Azure portal. And sometimes if you have the on-premises SQL Server, you can use the on-premise SQL Server agent and then connect from there to your Azure SQL databases as well. So all of these responsibilities as a DBA, we are going to take care. And Microsoft, it will take care of the infrastructure, installations like patching, taking care of the operating system level installation upgrades, and HADR is actually inbuilt. Once you move to the Azure, it's only like couple of clicks. You need to do to create those failover groups, right? But if you're on-prem, creating an HR is a big headache because it is so complicated to get things right with HADR. And backup restore, we cannot do backup restore on Azure SQL database. Microsoft is going to take care of the backup restore as well. And auditing, right? Auditing, Microsoft is going to take care, and different levels of security it will be taking care for us, Microsoft. On all these, like that we have like offerings, right? The SQL database, SQL managed instance, and SQL virtual machines, like creating the SQL server on a virtual machine. But do you know that you have that capability of going ahead and using the images that are already built? Like if you can see here, once I drop down the SQL virtual machines, you see all of those SQL Server 2019 on Windows Server 2019. So you can just go ahead and select. You don't have to manually go ahead and build a virtual machine and then install the SQL Server. But if you can if you can use the images, once you click the image, within a couple of minutes, you can go ahead and create a virtual machine. And once you see inside the SQL Server, like virtual machine, your SQL Server is already built. So it's like an image that you can use. And what are the purchasing options, right? You have two different types of purchasing options. One is database transaction unit, and the other is vCore. So database transaction unit is an old model kind of thing where it is very easy to set up. But the thing is, once you set up the DTU, you need to, no matter if you use that amount of space or not, you need to go ahead and pay for both storage and compute together, because it's a mixture of storage and then CPU, memory, all of those included, like IO. Combined together, they have provided as database transaction unit, where one DTU is equal to one transaction per second, according to Microsoft. So we do have basic, standard, and premium service tier within the DTU, but then it is very easy to set up. But then even though you do not use a certain amount of storage, once you set up, you need to pay for all. So both compute and storage come together with DTU, but that's not the case with vCore, right? vCore, we have three different types of tiers here: general purpose, hyperscale, and business critical, which we are going to talk in the coming slides. But vCore is the only model that is available for SQL managed instance. Like if you wanted to go with DTU for the SQL managed instance, you cannot go with that. It is like vCore is the only option that's available. But for your SQL database, right, Azure SQL database, you do have option to choose between DTU or vCore. And like you can also use Azure Hybrid Benefit, something known as Azure Hybrid Benefit. Like if you already have the on-premise servers, and you wanted to migrate very quickly into the Azure, right? You can actually code already existing licenses that you have for on-premises, and you can get certain amount of benefit by using Azure Hybrid Benefit because you wanted to code your existing license to the Azure vCore. So they can go ahead and give you that benefit of providing you with the discount. And there is something other kind of a discount that you can get using the reserved capacity, meaning if you can go ahead and if you can commit for certain number of years that, hey, I will go ahead and definitely use this much of resources for the coming years. If you can commit that, then by using the reserved capacity, because you are reserving your capacity, you will get a lot of discount on that as well. So we talked about DTU that we have three different options: basic, standard, and premium, right? So both the compute and the storage come together. Like if you see here, the data max size is we put it as 10 GB, but then we are just changing that to put the limit. But no matter if you use it or not, we are going ahead and paying for the entire limit. And if you wanted to know more details into it, you can go ahead and look for the link down below. And when comes to the vCore, right, we do have general purpose, hyperscale, and business critical. We are going to see in the coming slide what are those and how do they operate. And we do, especially for the general purpose, only for the general purpose, right? We do have serverless. Serverless meaning you can go ahead and only use the resources as you need. Like if you if you are not using the database for a certain amount of time, you can go ahead and pause your database for that long period of time, so that you have to only pay for the storage but not for the compute. You're saving the money over there. So for the vCore, you do not have to pay for everything. Like you can go ahead and manage. You can go ahead and add up the resource, or you can move on, or you can decrease the number of vCores as you need. This will actually save your money. And beside the screen, like right side your screen, you'll be able to see the while you move up or move down the resources, you will be able to see the difference in between the amount of cost that you have to pay for using these resources. And the compute and the storage are completely different. They are not they are not combined, just like the DTU, like database transaction unit. As I told you, like in the vCore, we have three different tiers, right? The general purpose, business critical, and hyperscale. General purpose, name itself says like it is for the general business workloads. Like for the most of the business workloads, this is the best option, and it is the cheapest option available. And when comes with the high availability, right? They do provide with the primary. And there is no secondary standby on the general purpose, and that is the reason it is so cheap. But then it is very good, because once you wanted to fail over, if you had a chance of doing a failover, then by setting up the secondary standby doesn't take much time. But when compared with the business critical, right, it do take some time. Like if the business critical database, if you fail over, it might take 6 to 8 minutes to come in. But for the general purpose, it might take, once you fail over, it might take up to 20 seconds. That's all it is, like a couple of seconds difference. And and under the general purpose itself, you have the serverless option. We are going to see about the serverless option in the coming slide. And when you see the business critical, right? Business critical itself says it is for the critical business purposes. Like you cannot have downtime whatsoever. In that case, like you have that capability of getting the more readable secondaries where you can do the reporting, and always on availability, right? Always on availability on these service tiers are already inbuilt under the hood. But the difference is whether they have the secondaries readily available or not. Like for the general purpose, we do not have readily available secondary. It takes time for it to build once we fail over. But then for the business critical, we do already have readable secondaries. But when compared with the IO response time, business critical is very fast when compared with general purpose, because in the cost also it differs, right? The cost is more than general purpose for the business critical. When it comes to the hyperscale, like I said, any database, like if you are having the Azure SQL database less than 8 terabyte, then we can go with Azure SQL database. But if you have more than 8 TB until 10 TB plus, then having that Azure SQL database on hyperscale is very useful, because inside it they have something built inside as like different layers of cache, where they cache most of the database inside the cache itself, so that they can restore the database whenever we need very quickly. Like if you compare with the on-prem, like it's like the difference between sky and the earth, right? It is so different, because they have this capability of placing that data in the cache at different layers. And for the hyperscale, we do have 0 to 4 readable replicas available. And point in time restores are very quick. Like I said, because it caches the data, it restores very quick with very less amount of downtime. And as I told you, we do have serverless option only under the general purpose, right? So what is the serverless? Like if you have, let's say we have an application name as timesheet application, right? Everybody wants to use the timesheet application on Friday. Friday, it will be peak because everybody wants to fill their timesheets. So during the entire week, nobody wants to use it. But on the Friday, we do have peaks of usage, and everybody wants to use it. All the users want to use it. So if your application is not using the database at certain amount of time, and it have the intermittent usage and unpredictable workloads, because the workloads are not consistent here, right? We only use it during the Fridays and Saturdays. So in that case, we took the example of as the timesheet. So we can go ahead and set the minimum and maximum number of records. Once we set that, even the workloads are there during the week, like Fridays, right? It will go ahead and scale up and scale down only in between those minimum and maximum number of records. It cannot cross that. And you can also save so much of money by setting the auto pause delay times, meaning you can pause the database, right? That means a SQL Server will actually, the database will be paused completely during that time frame, like from Monday to Thursday. We do not want to use the database, because that's nobody will use the database, let's say. So we can go ahead and pause the database during those time periods, so that you can save the money, because it will only charge you for the storage and not for the number of resources that you are using. You can save a lot of money. So that's the serverless option. When it comes to the security, right? We are not going dive deep into the security, but I would like to show you like what all security options we have here. Like we can do auditing inside the Azure portal, right? And then firewalls, like we can set up the firewalls if you wanted to. If you do not want the public access, then you can go ahead and create the private endpoints, where it will go ahead and create a DNS for you, the secure DNS. And private endpoint, no matter if they connect to the public endpoint, they can it will be diverted to the private endpoint. And then the security center, you can choose the security options, and then the transparent data encryption is also under the security. And there are a couple of automatic tuning options that the DBAs use. Like DBAs will love this stuff because in this automatic tuning options, which is under the intelligent performance. You see the forced plan. The first option is forced plan. Forced plan comes under the query store. Like query store is automatically enabled on Azure SQL database. So basically, what the query store does is it will capture all of your plan IDs, all of your plans for your queries. Like if you have a query, and if you have a 6 to 7 new plans that got generated, all of those query plans will be stored along with those along with the rest of the information, like how much CPU it took, how much memory it took, how many times does the query run. And you can have the ability of nicely going ahead and comparing different plan IDs, and you can go ahead and force and unforce the plans which you think are optimal. Like if you think a certain plan ID is optimal, and if you think the other plan IDs that got generated are not doing good job, you can just go ahead and force manually that plan ID which is optimal. And these force plans, like inside the Azure SQL database, force plan can be automatically done for you. Like you do not have to force and unforce it. It can go ahead and compare which plan will be better, optimal. It will go ahead and force that plan, and it will automatically unforce it whenever it thinks that the other plan is better. It will go ahead and force it and force the new plan. So that is taken care by the by the Microsoft as well. But uh, for the plan to be forced, you need to have a plan ID for that particular query. And you also have those automatically tuning options like create index. It will go ahead and actually give you an option of directly going ahead and creating an index for you. You need to make sure you look out for these, right? You cannot directly go ahead and just leave it like that, but go ahead and see what all options that does it giving for us. And it can also have that option like dropping out the indexes. This is a better option, like if the indexes are not being used, but in some scenarios it is a thing that you have to definitely look out, because some reports doesn't get used very often. They get used for every couple of months, once in every couple of months. In that case, you do not want to drop these indexes, right? So you have to go ahead and look for that as well. And you have for the query store, right? You have this query performance insight, where it looks exactly like the like the monitoring tool, right? It just looked like the monitoring tool as it captures the query IDs and plan IDs, queries. You can just go ahead and look into what are the most resource consuming queries. You can just go ahead and look. You have that option. It just look like the monitoring tool. You have all of the information right in front of you. You can go ahead and filter out on the resources, like more CPU consuming queries, IO consuming queries, and you can go ahead and look into those as well. And the tools that you can use for the migrations, there are a couple of tools that you can use, right? Azure TCO calculator migration, especially for the migrations, you can use SKUs, queue recommender Azure SQL, where it will go ahead and recommend you, like it will go ahead and compare your on-premise resources with the vCore resources available, and it can give you that recommendation. It might not be giving you 100% exact result, but it can give you like some of the information where you can go ahead and get started. And Azure Data Migration Assistant is the tool that you need to check for any compatibility issues. Once you fix those compatibility issues, go ahead and run the assistant again. It won't give you any results because you already fixed all those compatibility issues. But this is the tool you need to get ready for those migrations, Azure migrations. And SQL Server Data Tools is used to transfer the data by using the Visual Studio. And there is also a SQL Azure Migration Wizard and Azure Database Migration Services. So this last one, right, especially Azure Database Migration Services is not a free service. There is a cost associated for the service. You need to go ahead and look for that while doing the migrations as well. And so where can you go from here, right? If you are new to SQL, Azure, right? If you wanted to know and learn, get started with your Azure journey, SQL workshops are from Microsoft, where they will give you, you can go ahead, you get that test environment as well. You have those lessons, Microsoft Learn. There are all these lessons, like from the basics to the through the advanced level. One by one you can go ahead and start learning. These are the resources where you can go ahead. And Azure SQL for beginners is a recording sessions, like those are the videos that Anna Hoffman and Bob Ward created. Those are wonderful. If you wanted to get started, you can get that deep insight information. Like you can dive deep into the Azure SQL with those content, And there is also Azure documentation if you would like to read more documentation stuff. And I would like to, I referenced Anna Hoffman and the late SQL family member Ahmad Osama resources for preparing the presentation. I learned so much from them. If you wanted to, if you wanted to know more about it, there are several videos, and these are the best ones to start with. If you want like to know like what are the responsibilities as a DBA or way to start. Where to start and how to migrate. These are the wonderful resources. And thank you so much, Luca, one more time for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present for Azure SQL Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepti. I'm sorry, but there is no questions. So
Yeah.
I appreciate very much your presentation. Also, the serverless tire. I will have a look as soon as possible because I didn't know. So thank you. Thank you very much, and see you next conference.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you in the next conference. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Thank you, everyone, and see you next time. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Bye.